So our patients range from kiddos who are, as young as 1 year old that are having eye turns up through kiddos who have, developmental issues. So they might have sensory processing issues. They might be on the autism spectrum. We might have kiddos who are having difficulty with learning. So they're having difficulty learning to read and making that transition from learning to read to reading to learn. Then we have our teenagers who are learning to drive, and obviously all the visual skills that go into that are more than 2020. We have a lot of patients who come in after sports related concussions, motor vehicle accidents, strokes, brain injuries. And then we have adults who've had eye turns when they were younger and had surgery, and now the surgery is kind of wearing off, so to speak. So now they're in vision therapy to correct their adult eye turns. And so we kind of run the whole gamut from 6 months old to infinity and beyond.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sounds of Health. This is the show where we uncover inspiring stories, meet incredible people, and share valuable resources to help you boost your physical, emotional, and financial well-being. I'm your host, Dave MacNiven, and today I'm excited to welcome our guests, Dr. Juanita Collier and Jessica Liedke. Did I get that one right?
You're good.
I did. All right. I was worried about it. You can see how I hesitated. They're from the 4D Vision Gym and the podcast, It Could Be Your Eyes. Juanita and Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Yeah, we're excited to learn all about what you guys do. I would love to talk to you about your podcast a bit and also hear, I checked out the website for 4D Vision Gym and really interesting stuff. I really am curious to see what you do. But we usually get started with just learning a little bit more about our guests. So can both of you take a little time and just tell us what your background has been and what brought you to what you're doing today?
Okay, sure. So I'm Dr. Juanita Collier, and I was kind of always on the track to become a doctor, something in science. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. And when I went to college, I went as a biochemistry major. However, that was a lot more chemistry than biology, and I found that out the hard way. So then I decided, okay, I'm going to be a biology major instead. And I started working at a genetics lab at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And I absolutely loved it there. But the head geneticist was saying that, she never sees her children. All she does is write grants all day. Don't go into this career. And I was like, oh my.
That's great advice.
Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So then, I had to kind of regroup and figure out what exactly it was that I wanted to do. And I looked into genetic counseling, but that wasn't enough for me. Like I wanted to do a little bit more than that. And so when I went back home for the summer, I worked at an optometry office. And there, all of the women were pregnant and happy. And they're like, oh, we work 3 days a week. We have the best lives ever. This is wonderful. So it's like, okay, let's look into that, because having a family eventually was going to be very important to me. So then that's kind of how I got into optometry. And then when I was in optometry school, we saw that I actually had an eye turn out that had never been diagnosed. I had been going for eye exams every year when I was a kid because my sister had glasses, and I knew that something wasn't right with my vision. And I did what every child who knows something's not right is. I lied to the eye doctor.
Of course.
And my sister was looking at the chart, and she was like saying all these letters. She was saying they were in a different language. And I was like, ooh, let me try that, because then maybe they'll give me glasses. And he just told my mom that I was lying, that everything was fine. And so even when I went to college, I knew something wasn't right. Like I wasn't getting the information that I thought I should. And I graduated in like the top 10 of my high school class, and I still went to an Ivy League college and everything, but it was just harder than I expected. And we tried, like student health services as far as like getting tutoring and things like that. And that wasn't it. And then I went back to my eye doctor, and he prescribed me reading glasses without actually checking all the things that go into prescribing reading glasses. And that actually made my vision worse. So then when I started working at the eye doctor's office, that's when I diagnosed myself with chronic dry eye, because when you have an eye turn, if you don't blink if you don't blink as much, then you don't see as much double. And so I was compensating by giving myself dry eye, and all of these things were happening even though I had an eye exam every year. But in optometry school, you practice on everybody. And then whenever it was practicing on me, they saw my eye turn. We fixed it in a few weeks. And it's something I had been struggling with my entire life. And so at that point, I realized that I wanted to go into vision therapy and never have another child need to suffer the way that I did because I was still able to compensate, but some kiddos aren't able to compensate.
Of
So then
course.
that's how I ended up in vision therapy.
Now, the term you're using is an eye turn or churn.
Yeah, so my eye actually drifted out.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of, is that like a lazy eye or is it
Yeah,
different? Okay.
exactly.
Okay. Gotcha. And that was affecting the way it was affecting your vision and also the way you were able to take in information and learn.
Yes. So
Okay.
when I was reading, I would see double. So I would either try not to blink or rub my eyes a lot when I was reading. I would get pink eye a lot because you would
Wow.
get like styes and things like that from rubbing your eyes. So that was kind of the things that we see our kids come in with every day. I was experiencing all the time. However, these children are going to an eye doctor who's looking for those things, and I wasn't. So I want to be that eye doctor for those kids.
Okay. That's an amazing story. Are you originally from Connecticut?
Yes,
You are. Okay. So then you went away to school and then came back?
exactly.
Okay. Gotcha. All
I'm
right.
from Cromwell.
Okay. Awesome. Great. And Jessica, how about you?
Well, I have the opposite thing going on with my eyes. Instead of an eye turned out, my eye turned in. And my parents caught it early because I told them, oh, see, two TVs, three TVs? TVs are there. Something's wrong. Additionally, my brother had an eye turn as well, but his was a lot more visible. So they had already been watching him. And then they took me to the eye doctor, and the doctor said, well, eye is turning as much as she can't see out of that eye. So I had what is known as amblyopia, so the other kind of lazy eye, quote unquote, where I could not see 20/20 out of my left eye. And so then I had to wear an eye patch on my eye for hours a day, which is really popular among
I'm
other
sure.
6 year olds. They love seeing that. Um, and I loved watching my Barbies through very blurry vision. And, it was
Horrible.
Yeah,
horrible. And
that's
I would fight
tough.
my parents, and it was just really no fun. Long story short, eventually they're just like, she sees how she sees. That's the way her brain is. At least she's got one good eye. She'll be fine. And I, grew up and did okay. I also had a science interest and was convinced that I would be a biology major until my senior year. I was in a senior year of high school. I was in a gym class with all the special ed students, and I fell in love with special ed. And so I decided to go to school for special ed and become a teacher. And I ended up going to Southern Connecticut and was originally a special ed major, and then realized that you have to have about three different majors to be a special ed major, and decided to go for sociology because I'm a bleeding heart and I just want to, help everybody. So I started working in nonprofits after school. And then I kept getting laid off because, as we know, state budgets are a little tricky on nonprofits. And so then I saw an ad for former teachers wanted, and they said, well, I wasn't exactly a teacher. I was working in the nonprofit in a school, blah, 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 blah. And I come in and then I see this is what vision therapy is. And so then I started working here, and I get to work with children who are really, really young, who are just like me, who had to wear patches for hours. And then we say, no, you don't have to wear your patch anymore. Hooray. And everybody has a party, to adults who have issues with strokes and concussions and things like that. And now we are able to help people all over the world with our digital program. So it's kind of like I get to play with biology, with education, with sociology, with technology, and all of the amazing things that kind of like make our brains and our hearts tick, through what we do.
That's
That's
really
really cool.
amazing. What a roundabout way to then get to a place where you're mixing it all together. That's fantastic.
Exactly.
I love that. So, how many people are working with you in this venture?
We're a small team.
We're a very small team. Yes, there's like five of us.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How long have you
But
We're
been?
tiny but mighty.
yeah.
How long have you been in business for?
We opened 40 Vision Gym in 2013. And so we have gone to having, we've had times in our lives when we had like 20 staff on staff, 20 people on staff, and that was before COVID. And then after COVID, we kind of had a meeting of the minds and reevaluated what we wanted to do with our lives and, who we wanted to be when we grew up. And what kind of happened is what we noticed is that before COVID, like pre COVID, when we first opened, we had patients who would come up to us and be like, we just have one bit of feedback. We think you should be open on Sundays as well. I'm like,
Okay.
okay, good to know. Thank you.
We were already open Monday through Saturday from like 8 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Exactly. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, we should also be open on Sundays. And then
Well, I mean, you don't have anything else to do, right? I mean, it's just all about
Exactly.
work. Yeah.
Exactly. And then there was one time that a patient saw me at a fair on a Saturday, and that was a Saturday I wasn't working. And then he called the office and said he wanted a Saturday appointment with me. And they were like, oh, we don't have any coming up. He's like, oh, so she can go to fairs on Saturdays, but she can't see patients.
Wow.
So we're like, okay, So then we're seeing that, if we allowed ourselves to work 168 hours a week, people would see us 168 hours a week. And it was just very, very taxing. And it was very challenging, being recently married and new moms and all the things.
Yeah,
and
of
it's like
course.
everyone's kind of just wanting more. And then COVID happened, and we're home with our kids, and they're expected, like, they love it. And my daughter was like, wow, mommy, I didn't know that you could cook, because she was so used to the nanny doing all the cooking. And it's like all of these things, and I'm like, I'm like losing out on a lot of time here. And then we were watching Daddy Daycare, which is like one of my favorite movies, and it was the part in the movie where he was going to go back to work. And my daughter started hysterical crying, like, I don't want you to go back. I don't want you to go back. And then Jess and I were kind of like, okay, well, we need to figure out how we're still going to help everybody without sacrificing our lives and, missing out on our children growing up. So that's kind of how we got into digital.
Wow. Okay. That's all of that is so incredible. It's interesting that, I mean, for everybody, really, COVID did change something in our lives, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting that it was able to kind of give you guys a reset for a minute and see what you were missing out on with your families, and maybe that there's a different way to go, to have a little bit more balance in your life. The good news from that story I see is, wow, everybody must have really liked what you were doing if they wanted to see you at all times of day. So that's a good problem to have, I guess, right?
We're good at what we do.
That's fantastic. So then you did switch somehow to digital. So tell me exactly, I looked at the website a little bit, but tell me about what it is that you offer, when it is that people are seeking you out, and a little bit more about what you do.
Okay. So when just thinking kind of globally, our goal is to bring the vision therapy room home. So, and at the top, what is vision therapy? Because I don't think we actually really
that would be great. Yeah, for sure.
Right. So vision therapy is a lot like physical therapy or occupational therapy. We are doing exercises and activities to help people use their visual system in a more efficient way. Right. So we're retraining the brain to use the eyes so that it works better in concert with the body, the mind, the brain. Right. So for kids like us who had eye turns, and their brain isn't using both of their eyes efficiently, we are helping retrain the brain to be better able to understand space, to use the two eyes. So we're going to do exercises that work on tracking, focusing, using the eyes together for good depth perception, for seeing clearly and singly no matter where we're looking, as well as visual processing. So remembering what we see, making sense of what we see, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's vision therapy kind of in a nutshell. Symmetric vision therapy more specifically uses things like lenses, prisms, specialized equipment that, only optometrists and vision therapists know, really how to use in an appropriate manner to bend light to make the brain use the eyes better. Big picture.
Okay.
So our patients range from kiddos who are, as young as 1 year old that are having eye turns, up through kiddos who have, developmental issues. So they might have sensory processing issues. They might be on the autism spectrum. We might have kiddos who are having difficulty with learning. So they're having difficulty learning to read and making that transition from learning to read to reading to learn. Then we have our teenagers who are learning to drive, and obviously all the visual skills that go into that are more than 20/20. We have a lot of patients who come in after sports related concussions, motor vehicle accidents, strokes, brain injuries. And then we have adults who've had eye turns when they were younger and had surgery, and now the surgery is kind of wearing off, so to speak. So now they're in vision therapy to correct their adult eye turns. And so we kind of run the whole gamut from 6 months old to infinity and beyond.
That's really interesting. Are the things that you're doing, so you kind of liken some of it to physical therapy, right? When you have a body part that needs to be, re-strengthened. Are the eyes similar to other body parts? Are there things that you can correct just by doing these exercises?
Exactly. So we see patients who, decrease their nearsightedness prescription. So they're no longer need as strong of glasses as they used to once they get the muscles of their eyes working appropriately. We have patients who've lost, peripheral vision from a stroke or brain tumor or things like that, and we're able to help them regain some of the tissue that is functioning as though it's been damaged when it actually hasn't been damaged. It's just near the tissue that's been damaged. So their blind spot looks a lot larger than it actually is. So through vision therapy and retraining the brain, we actually can shrink their blind spot. And oftentimes that results in people being able to drive again. After
That's
COVID,
amazing.
we had a lot of younger patients, so in their 40s and 50s, having strokes. And in 40 and 50 years old, you're not expecting to not be able to drive anymore. Your kids are young, they can't drive you anywhere, your parents can't really drive you anywhere, and your spouse is working. And so these people have had their complete lives changed overnight. And so having them be able to come in, do vision therapy, regain their ability to have an enhanced peripheral vision, but also learn how to function in their new environment so that they can go back to work, they can go back to driving. We have one patient who's 38, I believe, and she finally is skiing again. And so,
Wow, that's
she wasn't
amazing.
able to ski because she had this stroke that came out of nowhere, and she has a 1 year old and a 4 year old. And and now she thought she lost a good portion of her life, and now she's back at it. And so, with vision therapy, we can really change how the brain is seeing the environment all around you and then how you function in that environment.
So you're helping people after some type of a crisis in their life to regain their independence.
Exactly.
That's really amazing. I don't think I ever really thought of the eyes in that way, that you can use, these types of exercises to retrain the vision and the brain. That's absolutely incredible. So
Exactly.
for your patients, are they coming to you from all types of directions? Are there people of all ages that have an issue with their vision that are then seeking you out?
Mm-hmm. So most of our patients are referred to us. So for our younger kids, we have a lot of patients who are referred by occupational therapy, their teachers, school psychologists, that sort of thing. And then we do have a large population of our young adults who have developmental delays, and now they're looking to go get their driver's licenses. And while 2020 is the goal for distance eyesight, that's not that important when you're driving. And so yes, we need to be able to see clearly enough to read the street signs, but we need that appropriate eye-hand coordination. We need to understand depth. We need to understand moving through space. We need to understand if this person cuts you off right now, what are you going to do? And
Yeah.
that's not your 2020 eyesight. And so we developed an entire digital program around that population that, so it's like, okay, here are the visual skills that you need to be able to drive safely on the road. And so let's have you kind of go at it, and they can do it at their own pace, and they can really kind of work through all the issues that they need to while they're going through the program. And oftentimes they're working with occupational therapists at the same time. So they're able to really kind of have this entire program moving ahead in front of them. And we've had so many of our kiddos get their licenses, and they're just so happy and they're so proud of themselves because they did all the work to get there.
That's amazing. And they're probably better drivers than most of the people on the road after they go through some
Tell me
training
about
like
it.
that. Now, are all of the programs digital at this point? Or are you seeing people in person too?
We do see people in person as well.
Okay.
But even the people who come in person are doing things at home on the days that they're not here with their own digital program. Right. So we have our kind of pre-prescribed programs like Built to Drive, which is what Dr. Collier was just talking about with our, drivers or hope to be drivers. And we have Built to Read, which is for our kiddos. We have Built for Life, which is our adults. And so, we have all these kind of pre-made programs that are good for every population. But we also have our patients who are coming into the office, and then we give them their own personalized digital programs to do at home as well, and to help work through with their occupational therapists, with their teachers, with their parents, et cetera, et cetera. So everybody's doing a little something digitally, and some of them are coming into the office sometimes.
What we found is that digital just helped to accelerate the progress in the office so much, because people would come in for their vision therapy sessions and we tell them what to practice at home. However, by the time they got home, they forgot everything about what they were supposed to be practicing. So here they have their entire program built out, and they can see, like, this is the video of this exercise that I need to do. And, now they're actually practicing and they're moving through the program much more quickly. Like we said, we have a very small team now. So in office, it's a very kind of like boutique, like we don't see that many patients in the office, because, our patients come in like 3 times a week. And so we're seeing them very, very frequently. It's kind of, we don't have the capacity to see a lot of patients, because now we're just seeing patients because we love to, because digital is how we're helping so many more people, that like we just come in here and we're like, ooh, we want to see patients today. And it's exciting. It's not kind of, patients who are telling us to come in on Sundays.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of gave us a new love for what we do.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, so I have a couple of questions. So you said that a lot of the people are referred to you, right? Your business is basically through referrals of other doctors, of other professionals. So do you accept insurance? Is that a part of the practice at all, or is it private pay? How does it all work?
So insurance sometimes covers some things. So it depends on the insurance company. So some of it will be partially covered for like the evaluations and things like that with me. And then for the vision therapy itself, that's usually out of pocket. So patients are usually using like their flex spending accounts and things like that for vision therapy.
Great. That's great. And are people finding you on their own as well, or are they all coming through referral?
Oh yeah, we definitely have people, Google or friends, word of mouth, the podcast, things like that. They find us on their own, and that's totally great too.
A lot of our concussion patients end up finding us on their own because they understand something's wrong with their vision, and they go to get a regular eye exam and they tell them that they're 20/20, and they're like, but I can't read. And the doctor's like, no, you can. And they can't. Right. So, they're trying and trying and trying to figure out what's going on with their vision. Kind of like how I was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like, trying to figure out like something's not right. I just don't know how to put my finger on it. And so they happen upon our website, and, sometimes they'll go straight to our digital programs without even coming to see us. So they get help right away. And then other times they'll come in for an exam, and they'll have a call with Jess first and see if it's a good fit and everything. So we try to help our patients as quickly as possible, especially the concussion ones, because your brain is healing, and it can heal in an efficient way or an inefficient way. And usually left to its own devices, it's kind of just trying to avoid further damage. So that's usually an inefficient way. And we need to then kind of break down those compensations and then build up a new pathway. So the sooner we can get concussion patients started on something, the better.
So in something like that, if they're being told by the doctor their vision is fine, they're 20/20, what is it that's wrong when it comes to a concussion diagnosis? You were talking about a pathway. Like what is happening there?
And so what happens with a concussion is that there's a disruption between the pathway in your brain that tells you where something is and the pathway in your brain that tells you what something is. Now, when we're thinking about that 20/20 vision, what we're looking at is just the what pathway. And so do you have the 20/20 eyesight? Okay, you know what the what, and then the where kind of doesn't matter. But then you have that same patient that then will walk into Home Depot, and they're so overwhelmed by everything that's around them because there's all of this what, and they can't really figure out the where of it. And so it feels like everything's kind of coming in on them. So a lot of concussion patients can't go into a grocery store. They can't go into Home Depot. Home Depot's the big one because it's just so much stuff, and it's very, very overwhelming. So then even going to like birthday parties and everything, they just can't do it. However, their eyesight is perfect. And so then they come into us, and we're looking to see how are they tracking? How are they understanding space? How are they understanding where things are and how to kind of compartmentalize them in their brains so that then they're not in this hyper sympathetic overload. So they're not always in this fight or flight mode, which is what happens oftentimes after a brain injury. And so we kind of get to calm everything down, have them understand space around them again, and then they go on about their business and it's like nothing ever happened.
That's so incredible. I mean, you always hear about light sensitivity with concussions and how somebody can be affected by that, but it's really information sensitivity. It's information overload.
Exactly.
And how similar is that to someone who's coming in with like a learning disability or not being able to process information reading? How is the eyesight affecting them in that instance?
And so technically speaking, developmentally, we shouldn't be able to read for extended periods of time until we're 8 years old. Our visual systems can't handle it. They're not strong enough to do it. However, if you have kids, like kids are reading at like 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
So they're automatically damaging their visual system by doing that too early. And so they're using muscles that they don't really have good control over in order to achieve these academic goals. So oftentimes by the time they hit third grade, when you make that transition from learning to read to reading to learn, the system kind of peters out. And then that's when most people become nearsighted. And so because there's so many underlying issues going on that they couldn't compensate for, the brain makes near clear at the expense of distance vision. And then everything at distance is blurry. They get glasses that correct for distance, and then they still have the underlying near problem. So then next year, their eyeglass prescription goes up, and it goes up, and it goes up, and it goes up until they're done with school, because then they're no longer putting that excess stress on their visual system. So this damage happened when they were, 5 years old, and they've just been compensating for it this entire time because they were using muscles that weren't strong enough to be used yet. So with our Built to Read program, it can be preventative in that patients can still have, parents can still have their kids reading younger if they would like to, but we're equipping their visual systems to be able to do that at a younger age. Or we use the program to repair the damage that's been done by reading at such a young age.
So it can be repaired.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's amazing. So I love all of this. Like, I think the work that you guys are doing is absolutely incredible. When I was young, I was diagnosed with hearing loss. So I remember, they found it in first grade through a hearing test at the school, and then going and having to do all of the hearing tests and be diagnosed, and then walking back into that classroom and the teacher saying, "Okay, we just learned that David is deaf in one ear." And some of the kids would come up to me at recess and just yell in my ear, "Can you hear this?" Things like that. And actually the reason why they really found it was because I had a hearing sensitivity. When I would go into the lunchroom, it was too much information, and I would start to cry, and nobody understood why. So my mom would come to the lunch and be with me. So all of those things, I think, finding those so that kids don't feel ashamed of it, or that they have the right support in order to develop properly, knowing that things can be corrected, or I just think it's just amazing work that you're doing. So thank you for all of that.
Exactly.
I'm going to jump in here. I'm really curious. I'm off camera right now. This is Jason, the producer here behind the scenes. I was an eye patch kid. Like Jessica, they decided to stop my eye patch, and they said there was nothing more that could be done. I would be really curious to see if I was to go in again and learn some of these techniques as to how I could improve my vision. It's very difficult as a person, older in age, can't watch 3D movies. I can't, do the magic eye books. I'm like the guy from Mallrats. What do you mean it's a sailboat? That type of thing. Mm-hmm. And then, and on top of it, in the video production and film production world, I have difficulties with, cameras and viewfinders because I can't see, out of one eye appropriately. So yeah, I'd be really curious to
Sounds like you have a new patient.
Yeah, possibly.
Give us a call, Jason. We got you. Don't worry about
Fabulous.
it.
So
it is true too, because exactly growing up and getting over the eye patch thing, and you're just like, well, this eye doesn't work. It's like it doesn't matter. And then once I actually, kind of started doing therapy on myself, and I was like, wait a minute, that's what depth is? That's what you're supposed to see?
That's awesome.
And, I laugh because my brother, he had the eye turn too. My brother is actually a MFA photographer, a professor in photography, high art. but he always just uses his one eye. And we talk about how embedded that is in him now, because that's just what he does, and how my life has been different because I've learned how to use both of my eyes. And it's a completely different world. He doesn't want to change anything because he's doing okay with it. That's fine.
Right. But imagine what if he did? Who knows?
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
That's so great. So tell us a little bit about your podcast.
It Could Be Your Eyes is our podcast. We launched it 2 years ago ish.
20. Yeah.
Yep.
I think so.
About there. And we talk a lot about different ideas surrounding, vision therapy. We share success stories and, things that have happened for our patients because of vision therapy. But then we also share a lot of tips, tricks, hints, and, kind of goings on that we see in our patients, in our world, in our lives. Just recently we were, taping a episode about the anxious generation, if you've heard of that one. That's a book that's out that is discovering like all of the different effects that technology has had on our children and on our society. And so we talked about that from a society input, but also from a vision standpoint. And as parents, we're parents of young children, and what that means to us. So, the podcast is a little bit about 4D. It's a little bit about vision therapy. It's a little bit about us. But it's primarily just trying to spread the word about vision therapy and how it can change lives.
Exactly. Because like we said, most people think that 20/20 eyesight, if you have 20/20 eyesight, then the problem that you're experiencing is not your vision. But we have so many of our patients, most of our patients come in and they have 20/20 eyesight, but they have gait issues, or, so they're having difficulty navigating. Like, we had one of our patients the other day, and she was noticing that she can't bring her groceries up the steps from her garage to her kitchen without holding onto the wall. She has 20/20 eyesight, but she has horrible peripheral vision. She has horrible depth perception. Her tracking's bad. So we do vision therapy, and now she's just like up and down the stairs and forgot that that's why she came in.
That's
But
amazing.
no, I promise you, I wrote it down.
You have to remind them sometimes.
So with
Of
our
course.
podcast, It Could Be Your Eyes. It's kind of like just reminding people that, there's something else going on here. That something's going on. Have you checked, because it could be their eyes?
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, this is kind of the purpose behind our podcast as well, is to try and get people educated about what's out there. And this episode has been such an education for me. I really appreciate learning about all of this, because it's not something I ever really thought about or considered, but I think it could be such a resource to people that may be having certain challenges in their lives, that it could be their eyes. So how often do you record the podcast?
It's twice a month that we release that.
Okay. And that helps you to really get the word out about what you do and some of these issues that people might not understand.
Exactly. We had some teachers in Cuba, New York. Never heard of it, didn't know it existed.
Yeah.
It was like an 8-hour drive. But they heard our podcast, and they're reading specialists, and they realized that they had a lot of kids who, no matter what sort of intervention they were getting, they weren't able to kind of overcome something that was going on there. And through listening to our podcast, they realized, oh, it's their vision. Like, this is what they need. And the closest behavioral optometrist to them was 2 hours away. So they were able to, try Built to Read. They actually loved it so much that they then got trained in our methodology. And so now they're able to incorporate that into their classroom. But we were like, oh, it's New York. We'll come visit you. We would love to see, but didn't know it was 8 hours away in New York.
That was an 8-hour drive. That was a long
Yeah, there are
drive,
areas of New York that are far.
Yeah, it was out there, but we're still working with them, and it's been able to help children. So 8 hours away from us, we had other doctors call us from Trinidad and Tobago, who are looking for ways to expand vision therapy in their country. It's been awesome to be able to really expand the reach of what we do, just because we get on a mic and we talk to each other.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's amazing.
168 hours a week.
Yeah.
Right. So you and your small team of 5 can affect so many different lives. So you guys have found that balance with the family life and the work life that's working out?
Yes. So
Yeah.
we're at soccer games and basketball, and
You don't want to
kind of
miss
like,
that.
okay, maybe I want to go back to work.
That's a good thing, though. Wanting that, that means you're doing it right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Well, let me ask you our final question then. So usually what we do is after we end the podcast at the end, we ask our guests to share something that they do in their life, a practice that helps them to stay healthy. And it could be something that affects their physical, emotional, or financial health. It's a very broad category, but it's just, I think, nice to hear about what other people are doing out there to help them to live a healthier life. So can you guys share something from your lives?
Sure. So one thing that we teach all of our patients, everybody in a digital program, everyone that we can get our hands on and grab their ear, is something called the 20-20-20 rule. So every 20 minutes spent looking at something up close, concentrated work, like whether you're looking at a book, a phone, a tablet, a computer, whatever it is up close, every 20 minutes, look 20 feet or more away. So look out the window and count to 20. So every 20 minutes, look 20 feet away for 20 seconds. That helps refresh your eyes and helps them stay nice and strong and comfortable through your day.
That's a great tip. That's something you practice?
Yes, as much as possible.
That's
Sometimes
great.
you got to set a timer.
Of course.
It's that I make sure my kids practice.
Right.
That's great.
We'll walk into each other's office and be like, see, hunched over the computer, just typing away. Have you taken your 20-20-20 yet?
It's a good reminder. I love that. I'm going to teach that to my kids.
Yes, that's
very important.
And Dr.
Or
Collier,
I'll yell at my son, I break, and he knows, and he looks away. 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's awesome. And how about you, Dr. Collier?
Each of us do one.
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
Sorry.
Elbow rule.
Right. So what we do here also with our kids and everything is everyone's bodies are different sizes. And so everyone's arms are different lengths. So when you're a little kiddo and you're reading, you should be holding a book pretty close, but not too close. And when you're, like a 6'5" man, your arms are longer, so you're going to hold something farther away. The standard for optometry is that somebody's supposed to hold a target at 16 inches. If you're looking at something up close, it's 16 inches away. Most kids can't reach that. And for larger people with longer arms, that's too close for them. But our bodies are built to kind of sustain themselves. So what we do is it's called the Harmon's distance. So you make a fist, you put it at the bottom of your chin, and right at the tip of your elbow there is how far away you should be holding anything that you're looking up close at. And so that's kind of like the perfect distance for your body. And so for my kids, when they're having their time and they're reading their books and they want to be close under the blanket on the couch curled up in a ball, like they know that they have to do the elbow rule and make sure that book's far enough away from them. Anything closer than that's actually straining their visual system, and
really?
So it can cause them to develop more nearsightedness.
Wow, that's a great tip.
I'm learning so much right now.
Jason's taking notes.
I'm taking plenty of notes.
Well, that's awesome. So I just want to thank you both for your time today. It's been such a pleasure having you on Sounds of Health. And I know that our audience is going to get so much out of this episode. So thank you very much.
Thank you
so much for having us.
Thanks for having us, and thank you for doing what you do. It's so awesome that every time I listen, it's something different. It's a different topic. You're sharing a lot of great information. So thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And we appreciate you, and let's keep in touch. We'll help each other to grow our audiences.
Yes, thanks.
And thanks to all of you out there for listening. That's a wrap on another episode of Sounds of Health, brought to you by Nutmeg Insurance Advisors and recorded at the offices of Nutmeg Advisory Group. I'm your host, Dave MacNiven. A big thanks, as always, to our producer, Jason Carubia, and for the amazing music by Rob Hames. Every week, we bring you stories that inspire, empower, and help you upgrade your health. If you enjoy the show, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and leave us a review. We love hearing from you, and we hope that you continue as an important part of our wellness community. Thanks for listening.